Hey, Candice, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited to have you on and excited to hear about everything you have going on. You've had quite the start to the year.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Acquiring Western consulting has been a lot of work, but a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, and any challenge is good. It helps with your learning and moving forward and growing. Always.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was so surprised, but at the same time, I wasn't because, once I had met you and we started talking about Dark Horse and, you've been in safety a long time and you'd branched out on your own to start Dark Horse,
Hmm.
it seemed like a natural progression for you, actually. Not that you were going to look for it, but that it'd come to you and you were able to acquire it and kind of grow with what you've already built.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything that is meant to be will be.
Hmm.
And when it's right, it'll fit. And I'm not saying it's an easy transition, but anytime that there's something like that with growing and moving, if it is meant to be, it will be.
Right. Yeah, I love that because, we get so anxious about things and we start looking at, you know, the outcome, like wanting to control the outcome. Like I'm so bad about teleporting sometime. Like I want to know how it's going to turn out. But if you really just let yourself go through the process and trust that, then I mean, you can't control the outcome anyway.
No, no, you can't. Um, it's really just about making it work. Like I said, there's always going to be challenges. Anytime you take on a new project, there's going to be challenges. But the challenges are, you try to project them and
Yes.
try to figure out a way to try to minimize it or organize. Mine has always been an organizational thing. I want to be able to do it, but in a way that is easy.
Hmm.
How can we do go through the motions with my team, with especially trying to be also sensitive with John and Susan? This It's not easy to let go of a business that you've built for 27 years
Right.
and not try to hold on to it
Hmm.
a little bit as well. So a lot of it has just been organization and communication with all these existing customers as well of, hey, this is what I can do, this is what we offer, this is how we do things. I know it's different than what you're used to, but I promise if you give it a chance, you'll like it and it'll get better, especially after we get through the little hump in the road.
Right. That's exciting because I mean, it's like you're taking it on, but you've been set up for this. It's like you have your systems and like what you were telling me the other day, I really enjoyed hearing about, you have your apps, you have your programs, like you have different systems that you've built or adapted that you rely on to stay organized and to
Mhm.
stay focused on those details. So then you can find a way to continue moving through that transition to where you're preserving what they've built and their legacy, but you're making it your own and making it a part of the way you do business as well.
Yes, there are so many different apps that we've been able to integrate into our operation from our field side, even down to our training side, in our internal communication that has made things 1,000 times easier. And it allows me to do more working on my business and less working in my business. How can we be better and more efficient? And if you can't utilize any kind of technology, it makes it really hard. So it's a you got to get with the times.
Mhm.
But there where I feel like a lot of people stray away from technology is because there are so many different products. There's a lot of different apps. A lot of them have the same functions. How do you use it? What's right for your business? What's right for our industry? Uh,
Mhm.
Going through in the last year, I moved different accounting programs. And the ones that I was using, it was great for when we were smaller, but as we grew, it wasn't able to automate a lot of the processes that I needed it to. You have to be able to adapt, and that was a hard adaptation for me, was moving accounting programs. But it's now looking at it, I don't think I could go backwards because it has been very, very good. But it's really just figuring out what you need for your business and how you can utilize the technology that is available and keep moving forward.
Mhm.
The the part that's the hard part is getting all of your team on board with utilizing the technology that
Okay.
is
Yeah.
available, because that's not easy. You're dealing with different personalities and different um, ideas of what needs to be done or how we can capture this information, and it's not always going to be the same. So how can you make it easy enough that they can do it, but also where it's fulfilling what you need it to fulfill?
Yeah, it's interesting to say it like that because it was a long time. I think there was a time when I was on social media and I felt like I was really, current on, the way the apps were working and yes, converting to smartphones. Actually, I was pretty slow to get a smartphone. I didn't want one. I had a flip phone for the longest time. It's so ridiculous looking back. Because like when you resist technology, you really start getting left behind faster and faster because there's so much now. It's not
Mhm.
just about having the smartphone, it's about, like, understanding the apps, and like you said, it's not just, to use them, like, to your benefit, but, like, for your business and for your team to understand how to use them and for you to all use them together, but I've learned that as we've progressed with AI, with social media, that there is a whole new way of doing business that is efficient, it's cleaner, and you can rely on a lot of these systems, and especially with safety and all the documentation. And it's such a detail focused part of the industry.
Absolutely. That I think was one of the biggest parts of us always kind of relying a lot on technology is if you've ever read a man's JSA, and I love all my guys out there, but there's some of it I can't
Yeah,
read, or there's information that needed to be on there that they forgot to get or whatever. And you can utilize that technology to really, really hone in on it and make sure you're capturing all of the data in the field that you need to catch. And this has been a way to just kind of elevate it to make it where it's really, really easy to do. Where even down to you don't want to write the location name, okay, then take a picture of it and it will attach it in the documentation for you, and then we're still capturing what we need on the back end without you having to type it all out
yeah.
or writing it down or finding a company man because the location sign is missing. You can just type it out.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Is that something that you've always used in your company, or has that come
I've used
recently?
different ones, and I started out with one different app, and it it worked. It wasn't real clean, and it was new. So then I kinda started I was like, "Oh, I might look into something else." So I kept looking, and ended up coming across Go Canvas. And then once I got in there, I was like, "Okay, this has so many different ways that you can customize it to really, really fit what you need." And then it integrates with a lot of different programs. So I integrate it into our calendar, and that's how we accept our jobs. So we know what jobs we have coming up. We know who's taking off work or who's going to be off that day, what events we have going on. Um, now I also have it integrated into my accounting program. So once the guys do the tickets in the field, it automatically goes into my program. I look at them, approve them, and then they go out. So it's cut down on a lot of the manual work that we're
Mhm.
used to, and you're not having to do it anymore.
Right. Well, and it seems like that would be more efficient communication. I mean, less room for human error and like because I've done safety and JSAs and things in the field before and I mean it's a lot of time and energy and like even like getting your tickets turned in or bringing the JSAs back to the office, it seems like there's a lot that can get dropped.
Yes. And that's where a lot of people's big, big downfall is on the safety compliance side is that they have forms, they have documentation in place, but once it kind of leaves the office and it's out in the field, getting it back to the office and trying to file it in a way that makes sense or that's easy is a challenge, and this has eliminated that challenge completely, where they every time they hit that submit button, it goes into an email. That email is saved and it's sorted based on the job. So all of my documentation for that job is captured in one folder. I can go back to 3 or 4 years ago to a job and look and have everything. if it's equipment inspections, if it's JSAs, if it's air quality testing reports, whatever it is all there within that folder. And I can, if a customer needs it, if we're in any type of an investigation, then it's all available, time stamped, date stamped, and geo stamped. There's almost no room for error or um, for people to question it of, well, was it done in the field? How do you know it was done in the field? Well, because it's time stamped.
Oh, that's
Well,
awesome.
what about this? How do you know it wasn't pencil whipped at the end of the day and just completed to turn in just to have something to turn in? Because it's geo stamped and dated. They can't turn it in late. There's no way. If they turn it in late, it has a different date. So there's no way to maneuver or manipulate the paperwork to not do it and do it
That's good.
later.
Yeah.
And that saves me, that saves our customers. So really it's more of from a liability aspect on the safety
Mhm.
side, our all of our bases are covered. And that's my job to protect my customers and to protect myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and that's so important because I have seen it. I've been on locations where the paperwork hadn't been filled out, and it just got dropped, like, it was someone's responsibility and it hadn't gotten done, but there wasn't any way to go back and check. There was no way of knowing, and I remember once there had been an incident and so much of the paperwork hadn't been done. It was just a disaster. I mean, thankfully, it was minimal damage, but it was catastrophic for a couple individuals that lost their jobs over it. And because of what could have happened. And also the whole situation could have been avoided if that paperwork had been completed because we would have known that the line spotting hadn't been done. That the communication would have been it would have been that day in the safety meeting. Like, we would have known, "Hey, this is what's going on. Let's look at our paperwork, make sure that all of our T's are crossed before we start digging."
Mhm.
And so in hindsight, and of course in hindsight, that's 2020, but to be able to just be able to do your work without having to worry or wonder or go back because once something's happened, then there's no way for you to, like you said, there's no way to fix it. So if it's geo stamped, it's time stamped, your bases are covered from the front end and you're not trying to save yourself from the back end. And there's a lot of companies or contractors that have done that or will do that because you get to work and you just want to do the work, but it's so important to make sure that we're safe, we're compliant, and everything is truly ready to go. And it's not just the Wild West as it has been.
And that's you and I talked about it before about one of my favorite authors is Jeffrey Gitomer. He has great books, but he is gears more towards the sales side. But even though his books are based in sales, there's a lot in it that I've brought over as not just a business owner, but also a leader, manager, supervisor, entrepreneurial, all of it. And he makes a very good point. He said in one of his books, he talks about the difference in urgency and importance.
Mm,
And not everything that seems urgent is important. And really need to, importance comes first before urgent.
mhm.
So when I look at our documentation and paperworks and things like that, that we really need to be doing in the field, a lot of the times because it's not urgent, it people assume or they make it sound like it's not important when it's actually one of the most important things that we do is
Mhm.
making sure that our paperwork is completed first, then going and starting our job.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many, it's like hurry up and wait. Like there's this sense of urgency that, you need to get all the equipment there, you need to get the people, the location, and then you're waiting on a permit to get signed, or you're waiting for the ditch to finish, getting dug, like whatever the case may be, waiting for the material to get there. But then that morning meeting, it kind of gets swept on the rug because everybody's like, yeah, yeah, it's the same thing as yesterday, the JSA, you sign it, you go to work. But it's really the complacency and the overlook is where a lot of accidents will happen. And a lot of that liability will fall through the cracks because we're not setting ourselves up for success first before we start the work. And I mean, we're responsible for lives, we're responsible for jobs. And, it's like you as a safety company, you have to make sure that your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted like 100%, because that liability is like, you know, your compliance, you know what needs to be done. And so, like, sending your team out into the field, like, they're the ones that are like, how did you word that the other day? Like, they're responsible for the entire location, essentially.
Yeah, they're kind of the authority
They're the authority.
on location. I mean, everything is supposed to really run through them in a perfect world to make sure that the atmosphere is safe, that everybody is where they're supposed to be, that we don't have extra things going on location that can wait. My favorite one is always like there's a delivery that we're waiting on and that we're still waiting for the delivery, but then the delivery gets there and it's like, okay, well, that guy can now go because we're still now in a critical operation or a high risk operation. There's we need to make sure that we kind of almost police it a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, some people call it safety cops, but um, we really are kind of the authority on site to make sure that everything is good. That's what our customers are hiring us to do, is to make sure that everything is good to go and that nobody's going to get hurt or injured or there's going to be an incident while we're there.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and that's really important, and like what you were saying about, Joe Gittimer, I listened to one of his podcasts after you were telling me about his books, and I found it so, it was interesting to me the way you said that about a leader actually needs sharp sales skills.
Hmm.
And so leaders should be reading sales books and not just salespeople, because there's so many traits that make a strong leader that are actually also sales techniques. And so for them to be
Oh,
out
yeah.
in the field, they're having to deal with a lot of different personality types, and a lot of different unexpected situations can happen.
Yeah, I mean, what do they say? The golden rule of sales is people don't like to be sold, but they love to buy. And you look at that, and it's the same thing with safety. People don't, nobody wants to get hurt, but how can you kind of get them on your team and have your back and go through the motions of doing the job? That's a sales skill. That's a sales skill, and we hear it all the time. I've been to a ton of different sales, or not sales, but safety conferences, courses, and they tell you, you got to get them to buy into it. You've got to get them to buy into it. Well, I tell them all the time, if they got to buy it, you've got to sell it. So
Mm.
you've got to figure out a way that it makes sense and you've got to make it accessible. If it's not accessible and you have overcomplicated this, it's never going to happen, regardless of your intentions or their intentions. If you've overcomplicated it to the point that it's hard, they're not going to do it.
Mhm.
So, how can you simplify it and make it to where they find value in it? If they don't find value in it, they're not going to do it.
Mhm.
So you've got to sell them on the value.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
can't just be I I've been in this industry for a while and I hear the same thing over and over and over again about it's always, well, somebody's life. It comes, you got to tell them they could lose their life. Well, we all are very well aware of
Mhm.
that fact, but we could also lose our life driving down West Texas highways.
Yeah.
And so it's still at the end of the day something we have to do. We can't all sit up in our houses and be a hermit
Mhm.
and work remotely. That is not an option for most of us. We still have to get out. So there's always a risk. How do we mitigate the risk is the issue. We That's the only option that we have.
Mhm.
But I always hate that they always resort to the most extreme of,
Mhm.
oh, you could die. Well, is death really that bad? I mean, all your problems go away. You don't have to worry about anything. And we have like extreme sports. People are driving like they do it down the highways. Is people's concerns really dying?
Yeah, I think it's more of a fear-based tactic
Yeah.
than, like, like, real, because, like, yes, of course, it's dangerous, like, anybody driving to work, it's dangerous, like, whether you're in West Texas traffic or Dallas traffic.
Mhm.
And, of course, it's terrible when that happens. It does happen. The oil field is a dangerous industry, but it's going to, like, the most extreme scenario when, if we're more proactive than reactive, we really don't have to have that conversation when we're all on the same page. Equipment inspections are being done, when there's a critical lift being done, people that don't need to be in the area aren't in the area. Everybody is, positioned where they need to be to, like you said, mitigate problems and minimize people being in harm's way, but there's not necessarily a need to, talk about the most extreme scenario when it's like, let's set ourselves up for success and being safe. And, and of course, like be mindful when you're driving and, not being on your cell phone and things like that. And I think that we just have, bad habits and think we're invincible and just aren't always paying attention. And it's usually complacency. And when you let your guard down is when something truly
Oh
happens.
yeah, complacency always in any type of safety situation, safety conversation, complacency comes up. And I've tried to tell people for years and years, it's because we become comfortable.
Mhm.
We it just like my normal everyday commute. I've done that drive so many times, I could probably do it with my eyes closed. I'm comfortable in it. I know what the road's gonna do. I know where the curves are at. I know I have it down to even like landmarks. I know exactly how many more miles I have to go. But the complacency is really, I would rather put it as it's because we've become comfortable. And what I've seen on my side is we talk a lot and we emphasize a lot on SSEs. So the guys that are brand new, our green hands. I don't, the SSEs, their incidents typically is because of just lack of knowledge. It's my veterans, my guys that have been in the field forever and ever and ever, because usually that's what they tell you. I've been doing it this way, Candace, for a long time. Probably longer than you've had this job, I've been doing it. And I'm like, "You're probably right."
Mhm.
It's because they're comfortable, and when we're comfortable, we make mistakes,
Mhm.
and those mistakes can be catastrophic mistakes, or it's we have done it 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be fine. It's that 10th time that there's a problem where we didn't take some little small something into consideration and it turned into a big deal. And that's where our issues come from is it's because we are comfortable. Now, new guys and guys that haven't been in the field for 20 years can be comfortable, and a lot of times that comes with a crew because they'll get comfortable with their own crew. It's the same guys that you are with every day for a long time, even more than you're with your family, you're with your
Mhm.
crew. And you become comfortable. And when you become comfortable, mistakes will happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there are things, on your commute or in a drive that can be different. Like you said, you get so the muscle memory of that same drive and the same location. But shoot, just today I was dodging tumbleweeds on I-20.
Hmm.
Then I've got a sand truck on one side, and then it's like, well, it's him or the tumbleweed, but it was a pretty big one, like to hit the front of my truck, and so I just because I was paying attention, I was able to slow down long enough, and the wind, of course, was, blowing as hard as it was today. It thankfully, went into the median, but something like that could cause a major accident, and that's not something that's typically on the highway. I mean, we are in West Texas, and so, I mean, tumbleweeds can, get pretty big out here and, come out of nowhere. Like a lot of our high winds and sandstorms and things like that, it's like you need to be paying attention when you're driving, and the same thing can happen on location. Like you've been on the same location for months and months, everything's the same, but at the same time, it could also be changing because if you're building a facility, there's new equipment coming in, or a new ditch, a new trench has been dug, and you're not paying attention and you step in it. I mean, from a slip, trip, or fall to something catastrophic, it is always about being alert and not getting complacent.
Oh, absolutely. Even there's, I was talking one day with of a friend from high school that every once in a while I'll call him pick his brain because he's a DPS. And right outside of Andrews, an area where there's an intersection where we have a lot of bad accidents, they decided to build an overpass. And so the first day they put up the stop signs where there wasn't normally stop signs, they wrote over 200 tickets in that area because
Wow.
people were used to driving it. And for my entire life, there's never been a stop sign.
Interesting.
And then now all of a sudden there is a stop sign. Even though there's signs that says there's a stop sign now, you drive it every day and you're not looking at that. You don't pay attention to that. And when they start talking about, especially in our everyday jobs, they start talking about distractions and the different types of distractions. And there, when we're driving, especially, there are always there's 3 different types. There's physical distraction, mental distraction, and then a visual distraction, and our phones require all 3.
Oh, okay.
So our anytime we take a look at our phone, it's you're physically touching it, you're visually looking at it, and then you're not thinking about what you're doing driving, you're thinking about what's on your phone.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of those on our highways. It's getting a lot better in the field, like on actual jobs. But even leaving a job driving down a lease road, it's still bad. It's still the highways are bad. And we just have to figure out one to put our phones down and mitigate the risks.
Yeah, that one's huge, and I know that some companies have implemented at least a hands-free policy,
Hmm.
and that because it's so hard to say you can't use your phone at all when you're driving 2 hours to location, and then you may be in communication with the office or, your foreman or whatever it may be, but hands-free is at least mitigating some of that, but you are still distracted.
Oh yeah, I my truck won't even alert me. I don't know what I must have turned a setting off or something, but if I'm getting a text, it doesn't do anything. Nothing pops up on my screen, nothing
Oh, that's
makes
good,
a
like, your
noise.
truck does that.
Yeah, and I don't know what I did to it to do that, but now it don't make no noise.
Wow.
So I'm like, and which is almost worse because I will obviously like look at it occasionally and go, am I missing something? Does somebody need me? Um, Usually it's not, but I'll catch myself like at
Mhm.
least touching it and being like "Oh, okay, I don't have anything," and then I'll
Yeah.
just keep going.
Mhm.
But that's hard for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to, but the realistic nature of our world means that that's not it's not realistic.
Mhm.
We have and we go back to electronics and communication and using technology, we have migrated to that, but that's probably the downside to it is that
Yeah.
all of it is coming through our phones.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I guess, like, just need to be more responsible and mindful of that, like, you're gonna be out of pocket for X amount of time, and if you're not able, if there's some feature that you could, clearly enable somehow to where you're not even getting an alert, that there's some way that you can do that, but that is it's kind of a catch-22 because as much as innovation and technology like that can make our jobs so much easier and so much more efficient, well, that's just you know, breeding more problems by you're always looking at your phone.
Mhm. And then you think about, like, going to a restaurant and somebody's constantly on their phone or going to a dinner and you're constantly on your phone. So there are some downsides of utilizing technology in your business. Yes, it makes you way more efficient, but then there are certain times that you're like, "I really wish that I could just unplug and turn it off and not do it." And
Mhm.
then you're like, "No, I can't," because it's everything is coming through there.
Yeah, because there's certain every day I do something, for clients or for my business or for my show, and there are certain pockets where, like on a Sunday afternoon, like I never talk to clients on a Sunday afternoon. If someone reaches out, that's great, but I'm never reaching out to anybody. And so every Sunday morning, I try and practice this, but every Sunday morning after I post my newsletter, I turn my phone off and I go for a walk or I do something where I'm completely away from it and I almost have anxiety about it. Not that I need it, but because you're so used to having it on. I
Mhm.
mean, a little bit of, the muscle memory and feeling like you need to be doing something. And so I found that there's a few times throughout the week that I can do that too. And one day this week, I woke up and I realized I'd left my phone in my living room, and I always have it with me because my alarm and I'll have it on the charger, and it was the weirdest experience. I'm like, what's this doing so far away? Like it was, but I didn't miss anything. And I mean, of course, if you own a business or you have guys in the field or you're 24/7 on call, like you can't
Mhm.
do that. But I didn't even mean to do that. But it was
The
it.
panic that sets in when
Mhm.
I've realized I've left my phone somewhere
Oh my
is
gosh.
terrible.
Yeah, because that of course, that's when something's gonna happen, like, where people need you or, I mean, there's just, like, some need for you to have your phone, but
Speaking.
speaking of
That's okay. We will not.
But it's, and most of the time, like most situations can wait, a duration of time. It's not everything is an emergency. And going back to like what you were saying, that not everything that's urgent is important. It's
Mhm.
just that sense of urgency when you hear a ring or, your phone is going off, like there's a call to action. There's a reason that your phone is beeping, and so it's like especially when you're organized and responsible and you have a business, it's like you want to know what's going on, or your family, and want to make sure everybody's okay. But phones can, they are so great and so helpful, our technology, and I mean just the way that we're utilizing AI, but it's not without its downfall. But it's, I think that we're doing better as far as like, well, I guess I should ask you, like, do you think that things are getting better? And I'm like, I think we're getting better. Do you think we're getting safer? Are you seeing more problems in the field as far as our phones and technology are concerned? Or are they more helpful than hurtful?
I think that it goes both ways. I don't think that we're having as many incidents, and when I'm not talking fatalities. I don't think we're having as many of these little incidents that we were used to seeing. Um, just because I do think that the they're getting better on that aspect, and we are really starting to, I say starting to, it's been in place for a while. It's just there's a lot of companies still with the same problems of it's safety's an expense.
Mm,
It's really hard to implement and enforce. And there's not a good way to do that all the time. And again, they're looking at cost effective ways, especially as a small operation or a small business. How do you do that? You can't, you're really trying to capture and obtain as much of the profit as you can to reinvest into the business to grow. And you're trying to navigate a really different world of what that looks like. And sometimes that means that safety goes to the back burner. Again,
mhm.
it's because it's not the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, it seems unimportant, even
Right.
though it's not. So it's kind of all over the map. I see some companies that really, really try and do well, and they've kind of taken it and embraced it and utilized it in all aspects. And then I've seen still companies that do the same thing where
Yeah.
it's last minute, it's an afterthought,
Yeah.
it's, we've got a big project coming up that it's Friday afternoon and it starts on Monday, can you do it this weekend?
Mhm.
I still see all of that, and it's still all over the map. I think it's gotten somewhat better, but I would say we still have a long ways to go,
Right.
a long ways on just the whole compliance and enforcing it in the field from the top to the bottom.
Mhm. Do you see it more in, like, certain personality types? Because I know that's something we also talked about, like, some of the old school, guys that have been in the oil field from the beginning, and we've always done it this way, and we don't need all this,
The
safety
fluffy
and
stuff.
yeah, all the fluffy stuff. Or, I mean, and you've got the newer generation coming out that's never not had a cell phone. And I mean, is it a little bit of a generational or
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love my dad, and I talk about him a lot when I talk about a lot of my safety programs and the way that he was taught and the way that he came into the oil and gas industry, working in the field and doing everything that he did. There wasn't really a training of any kind.
Mhm.
Not, and I'm not talking just safety training. I'm talking he's an electrician and nobody taught him how to be an electrician. It was a trial and error, let's hope you don't get hurt kind of a thing,
Mhm.
and very much just figure it out. And my dad's personality as he's gotten older is still the same exact way with me and my sister of you're going to have to figure it out. I can tell you what to do, but I can't show you what to do. So I still see a lot of that of just do what I tell you to. And I don't I can't really show you because I'm handling XYZ. This is what you do.
Mhm.
And really it comes back down to, and I tell my dad all the time, it's he has an end result that he's expecting And as long as I get to that end result, he doesn't care how I got there.
Mm.
And that's where I struggle is I want to know all of the nitty-gritty dirty details and get my hands on it, and I need to understand all aspects of it.
Mhm.
I can't You can't just tell me I don't function well with just an end result plan.
Yeah.
I need you to write me a map
Yeah.
of A through D. And I that's a lot of the way that I lead is one, I want to be extremely transparent, but I want to give them a plan because I don't function that way and everyone learns different. And some people can you can send them off out into the world and say, this is what my expectation is, and they'll be fine. But that's not everyone.
Right.
And my sister does great with being the ex do this, she'll get it done. And she will if she has to burn all the paper and burn Google down of trying to figure out how to do it, then she will do that. And she'll never ask for help. But I'm over here going, no, I need some direction. And you're the expert. So I want you to tell me what I need to do.
Mhm.
And I've tried to do a lot that same way with customers and my employees is they're coming to me because they feel like I'm the expert in the field, not that I am. There's a lot of smarter people in the safety world besides me. But how do I get them to where they need to be?
Mhm.
And if they need me to help them with utilizing technology in their operation, okay, let's sit down and figure out a way to make that work. If it's what can you help me do, then I will write them a plan. I will give them websites. I'll do all the things. And even down to like typing it all out and emailing it to them and saying, this is what you need to do. If you need help, let me know.
Mhm.
But no, it's, definitely generational as well. Uh, and those guys still they have so much knowledge to give. I just don't think they know how to give it.
That is very true. I think there's some that don't know how and don't want to. And there are a few different personality types that I've run into because you have those that they're not teachers. They know how to do it and you can watch them. If you figure it out, great, but they're not ever going to teach you how to do it. And there's others that the hard asses that, grew up and they were taught that way where it's like, no one taught me, I'm not going to teach you. And I've worked with all of these different personality types as well in the field. There can be different barriers to training, whether it
Mhm.
be generational, language, or you've been in this one part of the industry, but you've never been on the other. And it's like, and there's always this automatic assumption that this person is an idiot.
Mhm.
They're stupid. They don't know anything. They're worthless. It's like they don't even know what you're asking. It's like if you kind of took a step back, if they're a hard worker, if someone has a good work ethic, then they're teachable. If
Mhm.
someone is teachable and they want to learn, but you also have to have the teacher. And so trying to get all of these components working together where you have the student eager to learn, you have the teacher willing to teach, you have everybody safe, and you have so many different elements that go into this melting pot. And then
Yes.
we're all in West Texas, and everybody's from
Oh,
everywhere, and it's all this different kind of work. And it's something that I realized part of the reason I started my show is I'm so fascinated by the matrix of the oil and gas industry. There are so many different parts of the industry, and there are many different parts of the industry that think that their part is all there is.
oh, yeah.
And it's the end all, and they may be masters in their part of the industry, but they know nothing else about the industry. So it's like, well, how do we teach the generations coming in, people that are coming in that want to build a successful career, that want to contribute, that want to do their jobs right, but have no idea what's really going on? And I have met more people, and I've been one of them more than once, not having a clue what's going on. You just show up, you find out where you're going, and you're there, and like maybe you've got a shovel, maybe you got a hammer, and somebody's yelling at you to do something with it. And if you're tough enough, if you have enough grit and you're resilient and you can step back and watch, you can figure out a lot of it. But to really understand what it is we're doing out here together, it takes a lot. And it takes a lot of willingness and open mindedness to, one, admit that you don't know, because there's a
Mhm.
lot of people that either don't want to
Mhm.
ask for help or they don't want to admit they don't know what's going on. They're just trying to fake it and talk big. There's a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that where people will sound commanding, and so everybody thinks they know everything, and they may not have a clue, and so it's just the blind leading the blind.
Oh, yeah. But we see that a lot. I mean, and it's not that it's bad, but even with the recent stuff that's come up with Landman and
Oh yeah.
love it, but I've seen so many TikTok posts and all of that that's like, you want to be in the oil field? Come on. All you have to do is pass a drug test. And you're like, please don't tell people that.
Right.
And it's not that, it's that it is very, very different. It's one of the things that make it the greatest industry in the world is you've got a melting pot of a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different companies. There's different special people that specialize in certain things or that I would consider the experts in it. And you can be successful. You can come here and start something really from the ground up and be
Mhm.
successful if you've got the heart and the drive and the willingness to do that. But that also means that we have a lot of people that do need a lot more training or that do need a lot more understanding. Um, I've I'm one of those. I can't just say, oh, this is electrical, you have to do it this way, or this is that way. I want to be able to know and understand the full operation. And then it makes sense to me of what I need to do in order to mitigate the hazards. I can't just look at something and go, oh, there's a hazard, there's a hazard, there's a hazard. Those are the ones we're going to mitigate. We have too many unknown hazards in our industry that make it too hard to just look at a picture. I've seen that
Yeah.
where they'll, oh, and at their your safety class, they'll show you a picture of somebody doing something, and you're supposed to pick out all of the different things that are wrong with what he's doing. And where is he not wearing PPE? There, there's too many unknowns in our industry to be
Yeah.
able to make it black and white like that. There's too many different variables, too many things moving. It's not black and white. It'll never be black and white. It's going to need a diverse group of people to be able to do these jobs, but we can't keep teaching it like it's black and white.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah. And really, playing to people's strengths. I know that's something that
Mhm.
you'd mentioned the other day. But you actually have an assessment that your employees will take if they want
Move up.
to move up in your company, which I thought was really cool to hear because I mean, not only did it sound like it's a pretty tough test to take, but you're holding your team to a higher standard so that they can learn more.
Yes, it gives them it is a very difficult test. And I graded 3 of them last night, which is fun because of me and my 2 right hands, I was sharing them with them the answers. And I was like, "Is it me? Am I wording these questions wrong?" Because on one of the questions, the answers that I got where I was like, "Where'd they even come up with that?"
Because it's not
Eh,
multiple choice. You said
no,
this is all fill in.
it's all fill in the blank, but it was important for me to give them, 1, an idea of what kind of knowledge they needed to have in order to be considered an expert in their field. We can all go through a million different courses. We could go to college. We could do this, that, and the other to gain a lot of that knowledge. But if we're not applying our knowledge every day, we lose it.
Mhm.
And if it's not, we see it all the time. People go get a degree and they end up going to work doing something that it doesn't have anything to do with their degree.
Right,
So, and sometimes school like that is just not for people.
right.
So, how can I play into some of those strengths? Well, I give them an assessment that tells them what they need to work on. It tells me where I need to help. If there's something like I did last night, there was a question that 3 of them had answered that was just wild. So then I go to our group text and I'm like, "Hey, this is the acronym. This is what it means. This is what we have." And then it clicked for everyone and I was like, "I don't, but again, maybe it was me. Maybe I misworded it. Maybe the way that the question was worded didn't make sense. I don't know." But
Some people aren't great test takers.
yeah, and so I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna give them the answer to this one because it is important for them to know, but there's a breakdown somewhere. And that's as leaders where we fail 90% of the time is that if our employees are not getting something, if there's something that is not right or it's not happening, it's usually because we had an expectation of them that we didn't help them get to. So I'm not saying that we have to hold their hand along the way and all of that, but a lot of us have really high expectations because we have really high expectations of ourselves.
Mhm.
I have a really high expectation of myself and in my job, and I try really hard not to make any mistakes. So I tend to expect a lot out of other people and especially my employees. And some people don't deal with that very well. But if I'm not giving them the tools that they need, if I'm not setting them up for success, then is it their fault or is it my fault?
Mhm.
No, that's my fault. That falls back on me and my leadership if they are not able to succeed at all.
Right. Well, and then you as a leader being willing to take your own personal inventory like that will make you a stronger leader and allow you to work with different personality types to where you can play to their strengths. So something else that we had talked about was how if someone's not in the right position, a lot of companies will say, "Well, sorry, we don't need you," and send you down the road instead of saying, "Well, maybe you would do better over here," or trying to find a place for them to grow and excel, because it can be very discouraging when you've tried this, you've tried this industry, you've tried college, and you just can't find, talking about myself a little bit here, but like, I graduated from college. I've done all of these different things, but I'm like, I still don't feel like I'm in the quite, right position for myself. So I ended up taking a little bit of everything I've done and kind of making my own thing, which I'm, grateful that it's working. But, then it was the uphill battle of when you do your own thing, it is all you doing it, and then learning, like, parts of, having a business, or having any kind of independent venture where you're like, well, I don't know that much about accounting, or I don't know about this part. And so then you have to teach yourself, which thankfully, like, we are in the age of technology and Google and information, where you can help yourself a lot more than you could 20 years ago when we didn't have, you're going to the library trying to check out an encyclopedia. But I think that it's important to be able to see your own strengths and see your own weaknesses. And, if you can cultivate those weaknesses into strengths, or, take the learning opportunities. And so just really having that open mindedness, whether you're an employee or an employer, to look at the big picture, while at the same time, trying to continue to hold that high standard, not getting discouraged that, maybe there's mistakes being made or communication being dropped, but it's like, okay, here's another chance for us to evolve. Here's another chance to get to a new level.
Oh yeah, there's uh, in my classes, especially when I teach my safety leadership course, I talk about there's only three things that motivate people in their careers. And one of them is going to be money,
Of
but
course.
the other two are different. One is you have to have passion for what you do. And if you can find somebody that has passion for their career, they will do it regardless.
Yeah.
My passion is I don't get me wrong, I'm good at safety and I like safety, but that's not really where my passion lies. My passion lies more in the leadership side. The only other thing that motivates people is titles. They want a
Oh,
certain title.
yes.
And they'll work really hard to get to a title. Me, I don't care about titles. It's not something that's ever really motivated me. It's and money. I mean, yes, we're working to get paid. Let's not
Hmm.
say that we're out here doing our jobs for free because no one is.
Right.
But it's always been back to I really wanted people to have a good place to work and be able to succeed and do the things that they wanted to do and play into what they wanted to do. And how do I get there with a safety company? How do I make that work? And it's worked out really well so far. I can't complain about what how it's worked out
That's
and what.
awesome.
And I just got done doing my year in reviews and pulling literally every single one of them into my office and going, okay, year in review. What's your thoughts? What's your goals? Let's see if we can make a plan. And I'm pulling books off my shelf and giving here. read this book and then bring it back to me and we'll discuss it.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. How fun.
but a lot of them are sales books. And I tell them all the time, a lot of it comes back down to in a field when we are in those positions, we're essentially trying to get the same thing. We're trying to get people on our to have our backs to do what we ask them to do. And that's a part of it. So I'm doing the same thing with them that they're doing with the people in the field. They just don't realize it's all coming in one big circle.
Yeah. That is very cool, and it's exciting. I mean, you're in such a great space now too because you've, acquired Western and your team sounds pretty solid and you guys have your processes and your programs that you're using and all of these great techniques to just to help each other evolve because as much
Mhm.
as you're shaping them, I mean, they're helping you continue to grow and continue to grow your business.
Oh yeah, I couldn't definitely couldn't be here without them. They have allowed me the ability to be able to do things like entertain the ideas of purchasing and acquiring other companies and making they at least they trust me to make the best decisions that I
Yeah.
can. Or if I'm in a position, because when you do things like that, I wasn't aware. It's the first time I've ever done anything where you're signing NDAs. So you can't just go back and be transparent with your team and be, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. You have to keep a lot of it in. You can tell them small things like, hey, I'm thinking about acquiring another company. But then the questions start and they're like, well, who is it? Do we
Mhm.
know them?
Yeah.
Who are they? Can we see them? Do they have a Facebook page? And you're like, no, I can't tell y'all any of that.
Mhm.
So there's thank God they trust me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because I mean, you guys couldn't move forward the way that you do, but it's been exciting, just, getting to know you and watching Dark Horse. And I really love the way you do things. It's so organized and efficient and direct. I'm also very direct and I like to focus on, the work that we're doing and, again, with trying to evolve and always do better. But I mean, it sounds like you guys are on the right road and there's a lot of exciting things ahead.
Well, and anytime you can develop systems where it also comes with self accountability, makes it even better. Because essentially, that's the programs that we're using. Is yes, it's used to communicate and it's used to be efficient, and but at the same time, they can see the very clear expectations of what they need to be accomplishing. And then they can literally, like a checklist. They can
Yeah,
check it off of, okay, I've accomplished that task. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, I've accomplished that task. So it's been very interesting to see how people have adapted, even into people that have never utilized any kind of technology outside of their cell phone of how can they come into to here where it's like everything we do is on an app. There's almost nothing that we don't do that isn't associated with an app or a program. And they're like, "You what? So where do we get our paperwork? It's on your phone." Okay. So it's been interesting to see how people have adapted coming in, but then there's been a few times even now that we've had to do actual paper documentation and then they complain.
I'm sure 'cause you get used to it.
They're like, "Oh man, we've got to write this all down." And then I've looked at them, I've been like, this is why we went to electronic because I can't read that.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're trying to say here, but I can't read that.
right.
And so it's been a fun journey for
Yeah,
sure, uh, to see them and how they adapt to it and how they're very resilient. People always are think, oh, that's all when I talk to especially new customers about, hey, y'all should introduce some form of technology, and they're like, we have these guys that they will not do that. And I'm
mhm,
like, have you tried though?
right,
It's really not as scary as it sounds.
mhm, yeah. No, I agree. I think people are more adaptable. It's just change is hard, but I
Mhm,
think that, the more you put it out there, the more it's natural. It's just a natural part of life to evolve a little bit with change. Change can be scary, but it can also open up a whole new world.
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Change is there's always gonna be a transitional period in any type of change,
Mhm.
and how long the transitional period lasts is dependent on what you do, but if you can come up with a plan and start it and implement it pretty quick, the transition really doesn't take that long.
Right.
I mean, we went from closing on Western on December 31st, and then we had, of course, the New Year holiday and didn't really mess with anything through that week. But then coming back to work on January 6th, we had a full blown plan in place of what we were gonna do and how we were going to move forward with acquiring what they were doing and how we were gonna change it. I already had emails written to all their customers, and so as soon as I was able to start communicating, then it was like, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it." And it's been fun going to some of their safety meetings, and they're like me walking around with my iPad, and they're like, "What is this? What is this?" I'm like, "Oh, we're signing in." And they're like, "On an iPad?" "Yes."
Wow, very cool. Well, it's been exciting, watching it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the growth of Dark Horse. And I appreciate you coming on today, talking about everything.
Thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, as nervous as I was. I
Yep, I
thoroughly
know.
enjoyed it.
I knew you'd enjoy it, and I knew it would be great. And I'm really glad we were able to do this. So
Me too.
thank you again for coming on.
Yes, you're welcome anytime.